Hey guys, tonight we begin something a little braver than usual. You're standing barefoot on damp sand, holding a paddle longer than you are tall. The sky above is smeared with moonlight and nervous stars, and behind you, the jungle exhales its last breath of land. You've eaten your final meal on solid ground, hugged people you may never see again. And now your toes are curling instinctively into the cool, uncertain sand, like they're trying to hold onto the island. But it's time. You're about to leave everything familiar. No compass, no maps, no sextants, no sails like European ships, just muscle, memory, and a carved canoe held together with fiber rope and prayers. The air smells like salt and wet wood, and the sea ahead of you is a black expanse with no boundaries. Your heart flutters, not just from fear, but from the impossible excitement of what lies ahead. Somewhere out there, weeks away by awe and faith, is a place no one in your village has seen in generations, and you're going to find it. The tide creeps up around your ankles like it's daring you to go. And you actually step in, you push the canoe forward. And just like that, you are no longer on the world, you are floating over it. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while we're here together, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I love seeing where you all drift off from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first minutes are filled with clumsy movements. Your muscles are stiff, your brain over alert, and the canoe responds to every fidget, like a cat being woken from a nap. You can feel every twitch in the water beneath you. One wrong lean and the whole thing could tip. You're not even out of sight of the beach, and already, the sea has begun its little game, soft cross-currents, teasing eddies, and that quiet slap of waves that sound far too amused by your presence. You're not alone. There are 10 of you, all paddling in sequence, each one trained for this moment. Some are old hands, calm, silent, half asleep even as they push against the ocean. Others, like you, are newer, still wide-eyed, and listening hard for the navigator's soft instructions. Your navigator, he doesn't shout, he whispers. In the pitch black, that whisper is sharper than any yell. Left swell rising, he murmurs. You don't even ask what that means. You just adjust, watching the horizon as if you'll see something besides eternal ink. Your hands blister before the first hour is over. The paddle rubs your palms raw, and salt sprays your face constantly. You've only gone 5 miles offshore, but already, the island behind you is a fading bruise on the horizon. It's disorienting. Land is supposed to be the constant, the anchor. Now, it's just gone. Like a dream you forgot the second you opened your eyes. The canoe isn't a boat in the way you know it. It's a vaka, twin-hulled, built for balance and long voyages. It rocks and groans like it's alive. Each power planks, lashings, outriggers was blessed before assembly. The coconut husk rope holding it together was woven by elders in silence. It holds you the way only memory and craftsmanship can. You feel strangely safe in its instability, like trusting a tightrope walker who's been doing this for 50 years. Still, it's not comfortable. The floor is damp, your feet have gone numb. Your thighs ache from holding position, and every now and then, seawater sloshes up and kisses you behind the ears. As night thickens, the air cools, and mist curls along the surface of the sea. You feel like you're floating through a breath. That's when the stars truly arrive, not the faint sprinkle you see from your backyard, but a full orchestration, thousands, maybe millions. Some so bright they cast shadows. You tilt your head back and see the Taika AMD UI, the fishhook of MD UI, rising in the east. It's one of your waypoints, a cosmic signpost telling you, yes, you're still on course. But here's the truth, the sky isn't just a map, it's a storybook. Each star path has a name, a personality, even a schedule. You were taught to memorize them like a bedtime story. When this one rises, when that one sets, how they shift through the seasons. You learned it not from books, but from chant songs passed down like heirlooms, thick with rhythm, so you never forget. Your teacher once told you, forget the stars, and you drift forever. He wasn't being poetic. Somewhere behind you, one of the younger paddlers quietly pukes over the side. No one says anything. That's normal. The ocean does that. First-timers always think it's a stomach thing. It's not. It's fear and humility, and a reminder that you are very, very small out here. By now, your own stomach is empty, but not from nausea, just fatigue. The high priest unwraps a banana leaf and hands out pieces of fermented breadfruit. It's sour, spongy, and tastes faintly of the canoe itself. You eat anyway. Hunger is worse than flavor. Suddenly, a voice calls out, sharp, one word, driftwood. You snap upright. Someone points. There, half submerged, floats a chunk of red wood with a strange curve. Not from your home island. This is evidence, proof. There's land ahead. Maybe not soon, but close enough that wood has reached you. It's not just comforting, it's confirmation you're not insane for being here. The navigator nods approvingly. He does not smile. He never smiles. His eyes are locked on the eastern sky. His lips move softly. You lean in, thinking he's speaking to someone. He's not. He's reciting the star path quietly, to himself, like a monk repeating sacred text. Historians still argue whether Polynesian ocean crossings were acts of deliberate genius or beautiful accidents. Did they know where they were going, or just pray and paddle? But sitting here, watching your navigator track the stars with a muscle twitch in his cheek, you can't imagine this was guesswork. It's not magic, it's memory. A rogue gust slaps the sail, making it snap like a whip. You flinch, the vodka rocks. Someone stumbles. The navigator doesn't even blink. He adjusts course to degrees west. The stars haven't changed, but he has. You don't ask why, you just follow. Hours pass, the sea smooths. The wind dies down. You lose all sense of time. Maybe it's midnight, maybe it's dawn. Time at sea is less about clocks and more about clouds. Eventually, someone whispers, "He can't I call." The sun rolls like a wheel. You turn, and there it is, a sliver of burning light creeping over the edge of the world. The sun doesn't rise here. It spills, it leaks. It unveils itself with quiet drama. You breathe deeply, salt and smoke and old wood. This is day one, just day one. The stars begin to fade, one by one, like candles quietly snuffed out. You watch them disappear without blinking, trying to remember their positions, their names, their promises. You've been taught that the stars are alive not in the twinkling poetic sense, but alive as companions. You followed them all night, and now they're gone. It's disconcerting, like your guides just slipped away without saying goodbye. In their place comes the pale blue of early morning, that soft, aching light that feels like it doesn't belong in the middle of the ocean. A few low clouds hang near the horizon, glowing faintly. You wonder if they're hovering over land, or just loitering to confuse you. Out here, even clouds are cryptic. Your body is already beginning to betray you. Your shoulders ache from paddling. Your knees are stiff. Salt has dried in the corners of your mouth. There's a thin line of chafing, where the waistband of your Sulu rubs against sunburned skin. You shift position and wince. And you remind yourself this is still the easy part. Your navigator doesn't rest. He hasn't blinked in what feels like an hour. His gaze scans the water, the sky, the shape of the waves. He moves like a man surrounded by whispers you can't hear. Then you feel it, a ripple, subtle and long. The canoe lifts gently, not from wind or wave, but from something deeper. The navigator speaks. Taimona Nui swells from the deep ocean. These are the real maps now. You were trained to feel these swells with your hips, your thighs, the soreness of your feet. They are vast underwater currents, generated by storms thousands of miles away. Unlike surface waves, they don't break or vanish, they just go and go and go. Long, smooth pulses. Their direction tells you what wind blew where, days or even weeks ago. You focus. The The swell under your feet is coming from the northeast. Good. That matches what you were told to expect. But then a second swell intersects it, coming from the south. Confusion, cross currents. Which one do you follow? This is where instinct kicks in. The navigator watches the water. He asks for silence. Everyone holds still. You feel the canoe vibrate slightly as the holes ride the crossing patterns. He listens not with ears, but with skin. Eventually, he points northeast. That's the one we follow. Why? No one asks. If he's wrong, you'll know in 3 days. And if he's right, you'll never know how close you were to being lost. Historians still puzzle over this. Wave piloting sounds too mystical, too unscientific. Some dismissed it as legend until trained navigators demonstrated it in modern times, feeling invisible energy lines in the ocean. They were reading Braille. Western sailors call it impossible. Polynesians call it Tuesday. You dip your paddle back into the water. The ocean is glassy now, reflecting the sky perfectly. For a moment, you feel upside down. The horizon vanishes. There's no up, no down, just you in a floating mirror, being carried by invisible rivers. One of the teenagers breaks the spell. Bird, he says. You squint. Sure enough, a small white tern darts overhead, heading west. Not a migratory bird, a land bird. You squint harder and see another, a few meters behind it. Maybe a third. This is a sign. The navigator looks pleased for the first time. Birds don't fly more than a few dozen miles from land, especially not in groups. Especially not without food. You watch them disappear into the mist, like scouts returning home. You're not there yet, but you're close enough to hope. Still, you don't veer off course. Land birds can mislead. They might be chasing fish. Or just confused. You stay the path. That's the rule. Trust the stars. Trust the swells. Trust the route. Excitement is dangerous. It leads to mistakes. You try not to get excited. The sun's higher now. Heat is coming in waves that bounce off the water like glass. You squint against it. The salt stings. You start to worrying about your skin. You rub crushed noni leaf over your arms. It smells like wet feet and burning cabbage, but it helps. Sunscreen, 2000 BCE edition. You shift again. Your feet are starting to swell. The canoe creaks with every movement. Someone's coconut water ration spills accidentally. No one gets angry, but everyone notices. Then, a change. The swell beneath you grows stronger. The pulses are longer, heavier. The navigator smiles. You're near a reef shelf. The sea has a signature here, only old navigators know it. The water thickens slightly. It's hard to explain, but the canoe tells you before your brain does, like the ocean just gained weight. A shadow passes beneath the hull. A manta ray, maybe. Or a reef shark. Or your imagination. Someone asks quietly, how much longer? The navigator replies in a whisper. Ask the clouds. You look up. The clouds have changed. There's a long, flat-bottomed formation on the western edge of the horizon. Cumulus humilis, the kind that forms over warm land, not over open sea. Another signal. It could still be hours, maybe a day. But the pieces are falling into place. Stars at night, swells beneath, birds overhead, and now clouds on the horizon. You're not lost. Not yet. You drift into half sleep while paddling. Your arms move automatically. Your eyes blur. You dream of bananas and toro and firm ground. Then you wake up, because the whole creaks like it's speaking to you. Night returns. The stars come back. They always do. You find the same star path from last night, like a friend waiting where you left them. The navigator names them again. His voice is gentle, rhythmic. He's not telling you, he's telling himself, reminding his muscles, imprinting certainty into the air. You feel safe, exhausted, but safe. This is the second night at sea, and you still have a very long way to go. The third morning arrives shrouded in mist, not the romantic kind that rolls gently over green fields, but a thick, weighty ocean fog that swallows sound and sight. It presses against your skin, clings to your clothes, seeps into your lungs with every breath. The canoe, your world now, feels even smaller, more fragile, suspended in a blank, colorless void where the sky and sea have merged into one endless, indistinct horizon. There's no point in looking for direction. The world has erased its own lines. You wake not from sleep, but from the stiffness that comes with being too still for too long. Your knees creak as you straighten them, and your back flares with pain where salt and dampness have stiffened your muscles overnight. There was no true rest, only moments of drifting in and out of an easy awareness punctuated by the cold biting at your neck, the occasional slap of water against your arm, or the creak of a hull shifting under someone else's weight. You haven't been dry in days. You probably won't be for many more. Food is less of a desire now and more of a vague ritual. You untie a tightly wrapped bundle from your belt and extract a scrap of dried fish. It's hard and oily, and as you chew, you taste salt, smoke, and the unmistakable hint of mildew. Still, you keep chewing. It gives your jaw something to do. Hunger has become part of the background and comfortable, but manageable. You chew because chewing means you're still trying. Everything around you is quiet, not silent, but muffled, the kind of quiet that makes you feel like you're underwater, even when you're not. The rest of the crew is alert but subdued. Movements are slow, careful, and heavy. Nobody speaks. You've all learned by now that the ocean doesn't reward unnecessary sound. It rewards attention. The swells beneath the canoe have changed. You don't need to be told. You feel it in the way the hull glides a little more abruptly, how the rise and fall, just slightly quicker than before. There's a subtle chop, a restlessness in the water. The long, slow rhythms of deep ocean swells have given way to something more chaotic, something local. Shallower waters often mean land nearby, or rocks, or reefs. The kind that can splinter a canoe in a heartbeat. Your navigator sits cross-legged near the bow. He hasn't spoken in hours. One hand trails in the water. The other rests lightly on the wooden hull. His eyes are mostly closed, but you know he isn't resting. He's reading. Not with his eyes, but with his skin, with memory, with a kind of awareness that borders on something spiritual. His face gives away nothing, but every few minutes, you catch the way his brow twitches, or the way he tilts his head slightly to one side. Listening, you remember the phrase he once shared with you. The sea has no lines, only songs. You never understood it until now. A faint scent reaches you, subtle but unmistakable, earthy, green, the smell of vegetation, of land that breathes. You inhale slowly, not daring to believe it. But the scent lingers, there's no mistaking it. It's not seaweed or driftwood. It's the smell of leaves warming under morning sun. You don't say anything. You simply grip your paddle tighter, suddenly more awake, and then comes a sound, barely audible at first, a low thump, then a second. A slow, repeating rhythm. Not a wave, not a paddle, a drum. Somewhere in the fog, another presence is beating a rhythm into the surface of the sea. You listen. It continues, measured and deliberate. Still you say nothing. The fog thins slightly, just enough to let shapes bleed through. You spot the outline of another canoe, long, double-hulled like yours, but larger. It floats silently a few hundred meters away, carried by the same current. Its sail is furled, its crew sitting motionless, eyes trained on you. There's no shouting, no waving, just stillness. This is not unexpected. In Polynesian tradition, long-distance canoes would often cross paths, sometimes planned, sometimes by fate. You have no idea which this is, and yet, the feeling that you were meant to meet hangs thick in the air. The two vessels drift closer, not by intention, but by shared rhythm. You begin to see the people on the other boat, more clearly, lean figures, deeply tanned, hair tied back, faces marked by sun and salt. They hold no weapons. One of them lifts a bundle wrapped in palm leaves and raises it high. A gesture, a gift. You offer something in return, perhaps a coil of scenic cord, or a strip of dried breadfruit. The exchange is brief and wordless, There is no need for language. The ocean has already spoken for you. You learned from their signs and symbols that they came from an island to the west. 3 days out, they had seen the same stars, read the same currents. Their priest had a dream. Their navigator believed. They set out to find someone. That someone is you. You feel a chill deeper than weather can cause. It's not fear, it's awe. The kind of awe that makes history textbooks feel inadequate. This is not luck. This is knowing. A kind of ancestral knowledge passed not through charts, but through chants, rituals, and intuition older than metal. The other canoe gestures, follow us. You glance at your navigator. He says nothing. He rises, walks to the edge of the canoe, and without ceremony, dives into the sea. There is no splash, just absence. He vanishes into the grey. Seconds pass, then minutes. You wait. He resurfaces a few meters away, floating calmly, ears underwater, arms outstretched. He turns slowly in place, sensing the shift of the current, the vibration of underwater echoes, the texture of the water itself. Eventually, he swims back, climbs aboard, and nods. You all begin paddling again, this time beside the other canoe, whose drummer resumes his beat low, gentle, steady. The rhythm helps guide your stroke. It comforts, it unites. And then, between two waves, something dark appears on the horizon, faint, unmoving. You squint. It remains, a jagged silhouette, not cloud, not shadow, land. You don't speak, no one does. You just keep paddling, slowly, rhythmically, intently, because until your feet touch sand, the ocean still owns you. You awaken to a world still wrapped in grey, where the horizon no longer offers orientation, but seems to melt into the sky, creating a borderless expanse of indistinct colour, unweightless distance. The sea beneath you, usually filled with motion and voice, is now quiet, not calm, but hushed, as though holding its breath. The fog clings to everything, your skin, your clothes, your thoughts. It mutes the light and absorbs the sound, creating a world where time feels stalled, where every breath comes a little slower and every movement seems heavier than the last. Your body is sore in a way that no longer feels temporary. The pain in your shoulders, your spine, your hands has evolved into something more than discomfort. It has become the backdrop to every thought, every moment, like the steady pulse of the sea beneath the canoe. You do not complain. There is no space here for complaint. Instead, you stretch your legs carefully, rotating your ankles one by one, loosening the knots in your muscles, not for comfort, but so that you may endure the hours to come with just a little more grace. You resume paddling with a slow, steady rhythm, not because anyone told you to, but because the stillness demands it. The fog obscures everything, and with each stroke, you carve a small space into the silence, reminding yourself and the others that you are still moving, still alive, still working towards something beyond the reach of your eyes. The island you saw yesterday, the faint green silhouette that momentarily broke the emptiness, has vanished without a trace, and though your heart longs for the reassurance of that shape, your hands continue their work without hesitation. You learned long ago that the sea does not make promises, and that a glimpse of land can vanish like a dream before waking. No voices rise from the other paddlers. The crew has grown quieter with each passing day, their energy conserved, their hope hidden somewhere deeper than language. You are all tethered to the same silence now, not by fear, but by reverence, a shared understanding that the sea, like a stern teacher, only speaks to those who listen closely and wait without forcing answers. The navigator remains still, seated at the front of the canoe with his knees drawn to his chest and his chin tilted slightly upward, as though reading something in the texture of the fog that no one else can see. His presence grounds you more than any landmark could. You trust that he is measuring the swell not with tools, but with his spine, that he is calculating distances not with numbers, but with memories handed down in chants and shadow gestures beneath firelight. He touches the side of the canoe with the tips of his fingers, not absent-mindedly, but with focus, with a kind of deep listening that has nothing to do with ears. You remember being told as a child that the ocean can whisper, that it carries news and warnings in the temperature of its currents, in the rhythm of its breath. You never believed it then, now you do. Hours pass in this pale, floating void. The sky remains blank, the sea listless, and the fall persistent. Hunger comes and goes in waves. You chew slowly on a small ration of fermented breadfruit, not for flavor, which no longer exists, but to keep the body from folding in on itself. The salt from the air and the sea is dried into your skin, and when you lick your lips, you taste nothing but fatigue. And then, so slowly you doubt your own senses, the light begins to change. A softening of the grey, a thinning of the mist. You blink and squint, wondering if you are simply imagining it. But no, something shifts, and the first clear shaft of light spills through the fog like a warm finger pressed gently against your cheek. You pause, paddle half lifted, heart quickening not from effort, but from recognition. The water reflects the light, shimmering faintly in response, and the silence of the sea is interrupted by something new, the return of texture, of movement, of shape. The fog unravels slowly, like old cloth being drawn back from a window, revealing edges, shadows, and finally color. Not the blue of water or the white of clouds, but a deep, living green. At first, you're not sure if it's real. You blink again. It's still there. An uneven horizon. A rise in the distance. Trees, slopes, land. It is not the mirage you feared. It is not a cloud masquerading as salvation. This time, the shape does not disappear. It sharpens, it grows. It answers your doubt with confirmation, your fear with clarity. The others see it too, though no one speaks. Voices would feel like a betrayal of the moment. You all simply shift your weight, renew your grip, and continue paddling with a purpose that is both old and new. You are no longer just surviving, you are arriving. As the island approaches, the wind begins to stir again, not in gusts, but in steady currents that fill the sail with a warm, responsive hum. The canoe glides more confidently now, as if the ocean itself is easing you toward your destination. The scent of soil reaches your nose, followed by the sharp tang of wet leaves, and then the sweetness of flowers opening under morning light. You had forgotten how rich land could smell. Closer now, you begin to see details, the sway of palm trees in the breeze, the sharp rocks that line the eastern edge of the shore, and the gentle slope of a beach to the south. The navigator adjusts course subtly, steering away from the hidden dangers. The crew follows his lead instinctively, not because they understand everything he does, but because their lives are held together by the same trust in what cannot always be explained. At last, the canoe slows, drifting into the shallows. The sound of the hull scraping gently against sand is the first real sound of arrival, the final punctuation in a journey written almost entirely in silence. But even now, no one stands, no one cheers. Instead, you all sit in the stillness and let the moment settle over you like another kind of foghorn made of relief, of awe, of exhaustion, so complete it feels sacred. You place your paddle across your lap and look at your hands, at the blisters and calluses, the salt-cracked skin, the dirt beneath your nails. These hands are no longer the ones that left the island. They belong to someone else now, someone remade by open water and unseen stars. And when you finally step into the water, letting it rise around your ankles, then your knees, then finally stepping onto the earth itself, the sand gives under your feet like it recognizes you. You feel its warmth, its texture, its welcome. The ocean murmurs behind you, the trees rustle ahead. The canoe rocks gently at your back. You do not cry, you do not speak. You simply stand still, rooted once more to something solid, and let yourself feel what it means to have arrived. The land beneath your feet is solid, but your legs still sway as though they are unsure whether the ground will remain. After days adrift, your body has forgotten how stillness works. Each step you take along the shoreline feels untrustworthy, as though the sand itself might slip away and carry you back out to sea. You are not alone in this. Around you, the others move with a quiet hesitancy, slow, measured, as if the island might vanish the moment someone acknowledges it too loudly. No one speaks, no one rushes. This arrival is not triumphant, it is sacred. The shore stretches wide in both directions, curving gently into a protected bay. Its waters shallow and clear, revealing stones smoothed by time and coral long since bleached to bone. Inland, the trees grow densely, not in neat rows or welcoming paths, but tangled, ancient, and indifferent. Thick palms rise high above an underlayer of ferns and vines, and the air is heavy with the scent of earth and growing things. You hadn't realized how deeply your body missed this smell until it hit you: moist loam, bark, sap, decay, rebirth, the scent of permanence, of belonging. Your crew moves inland in a line, carrying only what is essential: wrapped bundles of food and rope, water gourds, and sacred tools carved long ago by someone else's hands. The navigator leads, walking with the same quiet confidence he displayed at sea, but his eyes are different now. He no longer scans the horizon or listens to the wind. Here, he watches the terrain, reads the angles of slopes and the shade beneath trees. He moves as though he's been here before, though you know he hasn't. Or maybe he has in a dream, in a song, in a tale whispered by ancestors who knew the shape of this land even before it was found. You follow a narrow path that seems to form itself with each step. There is no trail, no markers, but somehow your feet find purchase, and the group moves as one body. The trees thicken, and with them comes a change in the air. It grows cooler, less salty, tinged with the metallic breath of still water. The sound of birds filters down from the canopy calls, unfamiliar to your ears, sharp and bright. Their presence confirms what you already feel. This island is not uninhabited. Life pulses here in a rhythm wholly its own. You pass a tree whose trunk spirals upward like a twisted cord of wood. Its bark is soft and peeling, and a smell of camphor rises as you brush against it. Further on, you find stones arranged in a rough circle, partially buried in the loam. Not recent, not decorative. This was placed by human hands, perhaps long ago, perhaps forgotten. You do not touch it. You only bow your head as you pass. The navigator stops near a stream, its waters clear and slow, framed by moss and small flowers. He crouches beside it, dips a hand into the flow, and waits. There is a protocol to these things, an unspoken greeting to the island itself. You kneel beside him and do the same, cupping your hand and letting the water trickle between your fingers. It's cold, cleaner than anything you've tasted in weeks, and sweet in a way only spring water can be, untouched, hidden, ancient. You drink slowly. It feels like receiving a blessing. A space is chosen, not a campsite, not a village, but a clearing surrounded by trees in the shape of a bowl. Sunlight pours into it gently, dappling the earth in golden patches. You lay down your gear. Others do the same. No one gives the order. It simply happens. Each member of the crew spreads out, sitting, stretching, grounding themselves to this new soil. There is a rhythm to the stillness, the collective exhale after days of uncertainty and movement. You lie back in the grass, your eyes tracing the patterns of leaves overhead. The sky here looks different. The clouds drift slower, the blue is deeper, and somewhere, behind the rustle of trees, you hear the sea still speaking in soft, rolling syllables, as if it hasn't quite given up on you yet. You think about the nights spent on the canoe, the endless paddling, the hunger, the damp skin, the way the stars became more familiar than the faces of your companions. You think about the chance, the unspoken fears, the moment you saw land and didn't dare to believe. All of it feels distant now, wrapped in the kind of fog that had once hidden this island from view. And yet, you know none of it will ever truly leave you. You notice small details now, the warmth of the sun on your left cheek, the way the wind shifts gently through the treetops, the faint crackle of leaves as someone walks carefully nearby. You are beginning to remember how to listen to land again. It speaks differently than the sea, not in waves and stars and pressure shifts, but in texture, smell, stillness. It offers answers slowly, if at all. Eventually, someone begins to hum, not loud, not for others, but for themselves. It's a melody you've heard before, sung during training, hummed by elders, whispered by mothers as they weaved baskets or stirred pots. It is a tune meant to mark arrival, to tether the soul to a place, to say, I am here now, and the land accepts me. You hum with them, not in harmony, but in shared presence. No one speaks of the return journey. No one asks whether this place is home now, or only a stop along the way. There is no talk of building, of claiming, of naming. That will come later. For now, the land is enough. You lie still, letting your muscles finally release the tension they've held since the moment you pushed off from the last shoreline. You feel your heartbeat slow. Your eyes begin to close, not from exhaustion, but from peace. The wind rustles again, a sound like a lullaby whispered through leaves, and for the first time in many nights, you do not fall asleep to the rocking of waves or the creak of wood beneath your body. You fall asleep to silence and earth. When you awaken, it is not to the sting of salt or the slap of waves, but to the unfamiliar sound of insects humming in the underbrush and the high chirping calls of birds you do not know by name. The air is still warm, still heavy, but its weight is different here. On land, warmth settles instead of smothering. There's no salt on your lips when you inhale deeply, only the green scent of living things and soil that remembers rain. The ache in your arms has dulled, no longer screaming, only murmuring. Your legs, once unstable, begin to remember their purpose. You stretch slowly in the grass, listening to your joints speak, and realize for the first time that you are no longer moving. You are still, and the world is holding still with you. The clearing is quiet, but not silent. You hear life all around you, the drumming of insects, the distant rustle of something moving through leaves, the creak of trees in the breeze, the hush of water in the nearby stream. It is not a threatening soundscape, nor is it a welcoming one. The land does not greet you like a friend. It watches you, quietly, as if to see what kind of guest you will become. You and the others begin to rise, one by one, moving slowly, reawakening muscles unused to land. The navigator stands last. He has not slept much, if at all. He has spent the night in silence, seated cross-legged near the edge of the trees, his face turned slightly toward the wind. You realize he has been listening again, not to waves or stars now, but to the forest, to the pulse of this place, to the way new ground breathes. There is no spoken command to explore, and yet you all begin to drift into the green. You walk in pairs, in silence, not to scout or claim, but to understand. You watch the way vines coil upward toward light. You trace the paths of ants as they wind across stones. You step around patches of thick moss and avoid disturbing trees with roots that ripple above the surface, like veins under skin. The land feels layered, rich with things unseen, stories embedded in the ridges of bark and the shifting shadows cast by moving leaves. Eventually, you reach a ridge that overlooks a narrow valley, sloping down into deeper green. From here, the sea is visible once more, shimmering beyond the treetops in a band of muted silver. The sight of it stirs something strange in you, not longing, not fear, but a kind of gentle reverence. The ocean is not finished with you, but for now, it is distant, its voice softened by hills and foliage and the solidity of soil. You sit for a long time, just watching the sky change color as clouds pass overhead, their reflections dancing faintly in a small pool below. Returning to the clearing feels like waking from another dream. The others have returned as well, some carrying small fruits or seeds, others simply empty-handed, but fuller somehow, as though the trees had whispered something to them in the language of roots and shadows. The navigator is drawing in the dirt with a stick, not lines or maps, but curves and patterns that resemble wave paths, wind spirals, bird migrations. It is not a plan. It is a memory being recorded in the only way this place will allow. As dusk begins to settle, the forest darkens not with threat, but with intention. Shadows grow thicker, not longer. Colors become quieter. The heat retreats slowly, making space for coolness to drift in from the sea. You prepare for night not as you did on the canoe, huddled for warmth and balance, but with slow deliberation. Fire is coaxed from dry bark and flint. Its smoke spirals upward in thin grey ribbons, meeting the canopy and drifting out into the dark. You sit beside it, not for protection, but for presence. Fire speaks to land differently than it does to sea. On the canoe, flame would have been a danger, an insult to the water. Here, it is a kind of conversation, a reminder to the forest that you are alive, and grateful, and still learning. As the night deepens, the navigator finally speaks, not with instructions or decisions, but with a chant. His voice is low, almost hoarse from disuse, yet it carries in the stillness. The words are old, older than even he remembers, passed down not through writing, but through rhythm and breath. The chant is not for gods or spirits. It is for the land itself, a declaration of peaceful arrival, a request for permission. You join in, quietly at first, then with more strength, others follow. The chant becomes a single thread that binds your small group to one another, and to the space around you. It does not ask to be understood. It only asks to be felt. When the final note fades, there is no applause, no acknowledgement, only silence and acceptance. The night continues, the fire dies down. You lie back in the grass, listening once again to the chorus of life unfolding just beyond the reach of light. Sleep does not come quickly, but it comes naturally. There is no rocking to cradle you now, only the stillness of a place that has agreed to let you rest. Your dreams are wordless. They smell like ash and leaves. They move like vines growing in the dark. And when you wake again, it will be not with the urgency of a journey to complete, but with the quiet wonder of a land slowly becoming familiar. The days that follow unfold not like chapters in a story, but like leaves in a forest, each one similar in shape, yet distinct in detail. Time loosens its grip on you as the sun rises and falls in a rhythm that feels more like breath than calendar. Without clocks, you begin to measure the hours by the tilt of light through the trees, by the shift in birdsong, by the warmth or coolness of the soil beneath your feet. You do not count the days. There is no need. You are no longer keeping time. You are learning to keep presence. Your body continues its quiet transformation. The soreness of the voyage gives way to a new kind of strength, not the tense resilience needed to survive wind and wave, but a grounded steadiness, like roots finding their place in the dark. You sleep deeper now, without the sharp vigilance that the sea demanded. When you wake, it is not to movement, but to stillness. Not to fear, but to the soft certainty that the land will remain beneath you. Each morning begins the same. You rise early, before the sun climbs above the treetops, and walk to the edge of the clearing where the stream runs shallow over smooth stones. You crouch at the bank, wash your face, your arms, the back of your neck. The water is always cold at first touch, but never unpleasant. It refreshes more than it chills, reminding your skin that it belongs to a world that flows, breathes, renews. The stream does not ask anything of you except stillness. You begin to take part in tasks, but they do not feel like labor. Collecting fruit is a quiet act of observation, a way of learning which trees give generously and which require patience. Gathering firewood teaches you about dryness, about scent, about the subtle difference between bark that burns clean and bark that smokes and sputters. Even cleaning your tools with palm fibers and ash becomes a ritual, not of maintenance, but of mindfulness. These actions root you deeper than any ceremony could. In the afternoons, you sometimes wander alone, not far just beyond the edges of the clearing, into pockets of forest where the air grows stiller and the light filters through green in ribbons. You learn to walk more slowly, not out of fatigue, but out of respect. There is so much beneath your feet that you cannot see fungi and roots and insects, an entire hidden network exchanging silent messages. You do not want to interrupt. One day, you come across a tree older than the others. Its trunk is massive, its roots knotted, and exposed like veins of buried stone. Carved into its bark half hidden by moss and time, a pattern spirals, waves, arcs. You reach out and trace them lightly with your fingertips, not to understand, but to acknowledge. These marks are not yours, and they were not left for you, but you recognize the gesture, the impulse to remember, to leave something behind that says we were here, we listened, we mattered. You return to the clearing with that feeling still clinging to you, and it lingers through the evening as the navigator calls for a gathering around the fire. The sun has dipped below the tree line, casting long shadows across the clearing, and the firelight begins its nightly work of softening the dark. The navigator does not speak often, but when he does, the group listens. Not because he commands authority, but because he never wastes a word. Tonight, he speaks slowly, choosing each phrase with care, not telling you what to do, but reminding you why you are here. He speaks of the role of memory not just as a way to keep stories alive, but as a tool for direction. He describes how his teacher taught him to memorize the swell directions by sleeping on the canoe and listening with his back. He explains how chants were used not only to honor gods, but to encode navigational patterns, wind cycles, and the habits of birds. He reminds you that knowledge was never stored in scrolls or carved into stone, but woven into the voice, the body, the skin. A navigator carries their map inside their bones. You listen, and you feel the weight of this lineage settle gently on your shoulders, not as a burden, but as a mantle. You do not yet know the sea the way he does, but you have felt it. You have survived it. You are beginning to understand what it means to carry its memory forward. That night, you lie awake longer than usual, staring up at a sky only partially visible through the gaps in the canopy. The stars look different here, scattered in unfamiliar constellations. Or perhaps it is you who is different. Either way, you no longer look to them for answers. You simply greet them as companions, quiet, distant, always present. You think about the apprentice navigators you once trained beside those who memorized star names and swell patterns by rote, but never understood the silence between instructions. Some of them would not have lasted the voyage, not because they lacked intelligence, but because they never learned to listen to things that don't speak. You understand now why that skill matters more than any chant or chart. There is a phrase that comes back to you, something an elder whispered once during a lesson when you were too young to fully grasp its meaning. Land remembers what water forgets. You didn't understand it then, you do now. The ocean is movement erasure, reinvention, test after test. But land holds stories, it keeps them. And when you are still enough, quiet enough, you can hear them breathe beneath your feet. You let that thought carry you into sleep, not because it is profound, but because it is true. The weather shifts slowly, not with storms or sharp winds, but with the subtle transformations that only come to those who remain in place long enough to notice. The mornings grow cooler now, and the air carries a slight crispness that wasn't there before, a suggestion of distance, of approaching change. You begin to sense that the island is preparing for something, though it offers no clues. The leaves stay green, the sky is mostly clear, but something in the stillness feels more deliberate, like a breath being held. You wake earlier these days, before the birds begin their morning chorus. In the half-light, you sit alone at the edge of the clearing, feeling the warmth of the earth beneath your legs, while your arms curl against the morning chill. The others stir slowly behind you, but you remain where you are, watching the silhouettes of trees against the pale sky. The forest is dark at this hour, not frightening, just unreadable, its stories still tucked away beneath bark and soil, not yet ready to speak. You've begun to pay attention to things you once overlooked. The shapes of shadows across the clearing at midday. The way the roots of certain trees seem to point in the same direction. The way clouds gather, not randomly, but as if rehearsed. These observations were never taught to you. They were earned, gathered slowly like seeds. No chance could have shown you what time itself was taught. One morning, the navigator beckons you with a gesture. You follow without question, the two of you walking along the stream, and then into a stretch of forest you've never entered before. The path is not marked. There are no signs. and yet he walks with confidence, as though the trees part not out of obedience, but out of recognition. After some time, he stops at a stone half buried in the undergrowth. It is smooth, worn down by rain and moss, but still whole. A carved spiral marks its center. He kneels beside it, placing his palm gently on the surface. He says nothing, neither do you. Instead, you mirror him, placing your own hand on the cold stone. The air around it feels heavier, like it is holding memory. The spiral beneath your fingers isn't just a symbol. It's a path, a voyage, a return. You realize then that the land does not merely accept your presence, it has known you were coming. Not you personally, perhaps, but someone like you. Someone carrying the knowledge of salt and sky. Someone who could stand barefoot in this place and listen without asking to be answered. The two of you remain there for a long time. Eventually, he stands, brushes moss from his knees, and begins the walk back. You follow, not because you are told to, but because you know there is nothing more to learn from that stone today. It has given what it chose to give. That evening, by the fire, the navigator begins to speak again, not in stories or instructions, but in questions. He asks the group what you have noticed about the land, the animals, the sky. The question is not rhetorical. He listens to each answer, eyes closed, nodding occasionally, allowing long silences between responses. You all speak more now, but not quickly. Each word is weighed. Each answer carries observation, not speculation. You realize this is not a test. It is a ritual, a gathering of collective memory. The land will not give its secrets to one person. It demands a chorus. You speak last. You share the spiral stone, the heaviness of the air around it, the way the moss curved along its ridges. The navigator opens his eyes at that, and looks at you with something close to pride, but he says nothing. His approval is not given in words, but in continued attention. He does not need to praise. He only needs to trust you enough to keep asking. Later that night, after the fire has burned low and the others have drifted into sleep, you remain awake, staring at the coals. Their glow pulses faintly, the last remnant of the day's warmth. You think about the sea again, not longingly, not fearfully, but with understanding. You realize that in the ocean, you had to find your place constantly, reoriented by every changing wind, every flicker of starlight. But here on land, your place is still, but no less alive. You are not drifting, you are deepening. You lie back and look at the stars through the narrow slice of sky above you. They look different now, not in arrangement, but in purpose. You no longer search them for direction. You recognize them as companions, quiet, patient, steady. Somewhere behind the trees, a bird calls once. Then again, it is not a sound you've heard before. You close your eyes and listen carefully, memorizing the rhythm, the tone, the pauses. You know it matters, even if you don't yet know why. Tomorrow, the navigator will ask you again, what have you noticed? And you will be ready. There are no dramatic turns in the days that follow, no sudden storms, no beasts in the trees, no revelations written in the sky. Yet something is changing, slowly and undeniably. The forest grows quieter, not in volume, but in mood. The birds still sing, the wind still moves, the leaves still rustle, but there's a tension now in the air, a pressure you feel in your joints and behind your eyes. It is the silence that comes before something arrives, though you do not yet know what. You begin to dream again, but differently now. No longer do your dreams carry you back to the canoe, or the swell of waves, or the biting salt that dried on your skin each morning. Instead, your dreams sink into the land. You see roots twisting beneath the earth like veins of memory. You hear voices, not speaking in any known language, but in the rhythm of rainfall and the hush of dew sliding down broad leaves. You wake each morning with the sense that something has been told to you, something important, but it slips away as soon as your eyes open, leaving behind only a hum, a pulse, a kind of readiness. The tasks of daily life remain, but your relationship with them evolves. You no longer gather fruit as if ticking off a necessity. Now you notice the timing of ripeness, the way certain plants respond to shade versus sun, how the scent of one blossom can predict the coming of another. You feel the shift in soil texture beneath your feet as you walk barefoot down the same path you've walked for weeks. You know which stones are warmest after midday and which parts of the stream flow slowest after rain. The land has ceased to be your destination. It has become your teacher. The navigator watches all of this, though he rarely comments. He moves through the forest like one who has always belonged here, and yet you know he does not. His confidence does not come from ownership, but from observation. He moves only when necessary, speaks only when silence has done all it can. He's not trying to master this place. He's trying to remember it. One morning, you are awakened not by sound, but by absence. The navigator is gone from the clearing before the sun rises. This is unusual. He's not the type to disappear without intention. You hesitate only a moment before following. His trail is faint. He walks like someone who expects the land to guide him, not mark his path for others. But you find him eventually, standing in a marshy grove where the trees are short and the ground is soft with moss and fern. He's not looking at the trees. He's looking up. You follow his gaze. Above you, the sky is clear and usual for morning and the stars are still faintly visible. He's tracing something with his hand, a slow motion in the air. You recognize it after a moment, the arc of a constellation that once guided your canoe at sea. You feel a shiver, not from cold, but from recognition. The same stars that brought you across the water now hang above this island, unchanged, watching. The navigator lowers his hand, looks at you, and nods. He says no words, but you understand. This, too, is part of wayfinding. The stars were not left behind when you stepped onto land. They are still with you, measuring, anchoring, reminding. That night, back at the clearing, you find yourself lying awake again, watching the stars remerge, one by one. But this time, you're not searching for a direction, you're searching for rhythm. You begin to notice the way each star rises, how quickly, how sharply, how high. You realize that even here, on solid ground, they still offer messages. You just have to relearn how to hear them. The next day, you speak with others in the group. Quietly, without ceremony, you begin to compare notes, how the air changes before the stream floods, how the bees cluster on one side of the clearing before rain, how the birds fall silent in the hour before the wind shifts. No one claims to know anything for sure, but piece by piece, the fragments begin to form a map, not one of roads or rivers, but of sensations, timings, echoes. You begin to understand what the navigator has known all along, that navigation never ends. It only changes form. You may have stopped moving across the sea, but now you are moving through something just as vast: memory, ecology, rhythm. The island is not a place. It is a system, a language. And you are learning to speak it. You start marking your observations, not with charcoal or lines, but by patterning your days. When you feel something shift, wind, moisture, light, you alter your route. You test your instincts. You predict where the animals will gather, when the stream will flood, how many hours before dusk the sky will begin to darken, and more often than not, you are right. The navigator begins to defer small decisions to you. He gestures instead of instructing. He listens when you speak, not because you have become master, but because you have proven that you are listening deeply, that you are no longer waiting to be told. And still, the sense of something approaching grows stronger. The birds begin flying differently, in erratic spirals instead of smooth arcs. The insects grow quieter. The wind at night no longer calls, but carries heat with it, as if the world is exhaling from its core. You feel it in your bones now, in your sleep, in the weight of your breath as you wake. The land is changing, and you are changing with it. You wake to thunder, but not the kind that cracks and shatters the sky. This thunder rolls deep and low, like something ancient stirring beneath the earth, its voice muffled and slow. The trees do not sway, and the sky does not flash. Yet the sound continues distant, rhythmic, a pulse rather than a warning. You lie still in the early light, your body tense not from fear, but from alertness. Something is coming. Not a storm, perhaps, but a moment, a turn, a shift in the quiet agreements between you and this island. The others wait gradually, each face bearing the same furrow of uneasy recognition. The navigator is already awake, standing near the stream, his arms crossed over his chest, not watching the sky, but the water. It is rising not in panic, not in flood, but in a steady, intentional swell, as though the forest has decided to take a longer breath than usual. When he turns to meet your gaze, he does not look concerned, he looks prepared. He speaks at last, calling the group together with a soft command. You gather around him, still rubbing sleep from your eyes, and he tells you what he believes. That this is not a punishment, not a curse, but a convergence. A meeting of rhythms of ocean and island, of season and spirit. He reminds you that you are guests here, not settlers. The island has allowed your presence, but now it may be reminding you of your impermanence, and so, you prepare not to leave, not yet, but to respond. The tasks are simple but deliberate. You gather your bundles, tie them higher in the trees. You reinforce the small shelters, check the fire pit, tie knots with extra care. Not out of panic, but out of respect. If the island is asking you to hold still, you will hold still. If it is testing you, you will not fight. You will wait. By midday, the thunder has grown louder, yet still the sky remains a pale, flat grey. No lightning, no rain. Only that sound, that pressure, that weight in the air like hands pressing down on your shoulders. The birds have vanished from the trees. The insects are silent. The stream has swallowed its banks. You remember something now, one of the old teachings, passed down through a chant, half understood when you first heard it. When the forest grows quiet, it is not resting. It is listening. You feel the truth of it in your spine. You go to the spiral stone again, alone this time. The walk is slow, deliberate, each step measured like a heartbeat. When you reach it, the moss is wet and darker than before. The carved grooves are clearer now, as if the stone has exhaled and revealed more of itself. You kneel beside it and lay your palm on its center. The earth vibrates, barely. Not like an earthquake, like a drum, struck softly. You do not move your hand, you do not speak, you simply wait. The sensation fades after a time, and you rise, calmer than before. There is no fear left in you, only readiness. Back at the clearing, the others have gathered around the fire, though no one is lighting it yet. The navigator motions for silence. He begins to chant, not a song of guidance or memory, but one of stillness. A chant to mark pause, to open space, to let what is come closer. You do not know the words, but you recognize the tone. It's the sound of someone holding the door open for something sacred to pass through. Night falls slowly, more slowly than you've ever seen. The light lingers like a guest reluctant to leave. When darkness finally settles, it is thick, complete. There is no moon, no stars, only blackness and breath, and the occasional crack of a branch far in the trees. Then it happens. A wind rises not from the sky, but from the ground, curling upward through the clearing like a warm exhale from the belly of the earth. The fire, though unlit, glows faintly with reflected light, not from above, but from within. You look around and realize the entire clearing is glowing, faintly, as though the moss and bark and stone have remembered some old fire deep in their grain and decided to share it. The navigator kneels. So do you. So do the others. No one speaks. You realize this is not a storm. This is an arrival. And then, through the trees, you see them not figures, not spirits, but shapes of movement and memory, barely perceptible. They move like wind and shadow, like the stories of ancestors made real. Not ghosts, not visions, echoes, impressions, the land remembering itself. They pass through without sound, without threat, brushing by your skin like fog across leaves. You do not tremble. You remain kneeling, still and open. and the sensation fills you not terror, not awe, but recognition. They pass, and the glow fades, and the island is quiet again. But now, you understand what it means to be allowed here. The days that follow the glow feel quieter not in sound, but in spirit. The air is lighter, almost gentler, as if the island itself has taken a deep breath and slowly exhaled. You notice it in the way leaves move, not with force, but with grace. You feel it in your limbs, in the ache that no longer pulls, only lingers like a memory of effort. The land is not celebrating, but it is no longer questioning your presence. There are no words spoken about what happened that night, no debates, no speculation. The navigator does not explain, and no one asks him to. You all know that language would flatten it. Some things aren't meant to be translated, only carried. And so, you carry it, in your silence, in the way you move through the forest, in the way you kneel now not out of fear, but in recognition. Whenever you return to the stone, your routine resumes, though nothing feels routine. You rise, walk the stream, observe the insects, mark the patterns of wind and bird. But there's a new kind of noticing in you, a deeper attention to what shifts beneath the obvious. A fallen leaf now tells you more than a weather chant. A bird's silence tells you more than its call. One morning, you wake and find the navigator waiting by your shelter. He says only 2 words, "Come, learn," and you do. You follow him without hesitation, feet moving through underbrush that now parts for you without protest. He takes you not to a shrine, or a clearing, or a carved rock, but to a patch of flat earth near the base of an old tree. It's a place you've passed many times. You never thought of it as significant. But now, with him standing beside it, the patch of soil feels like an altar, or a mirror. He kneels and begins drawing in the dirt. Not lines, but arcs, not names, but pulses. The way stars rise, the way swells roll, the way roots curve. He does not narrate, he simply traces. Then he hands you the stick. You hesitate, but you know this isn't a test of knowledge. It's a test of presence. So you draw. You draw what you remember, not what you've been taught, but what you've felt. You draw the shape of the wind that carried your canoe across the reef, the spiral of the stone you touched during the thunder, the rhythm of the stars you watched as the clearing glowed. Your hand trembles, but you keep going. When you finish, the navigator does not correct or praise. He erases the drawing slowly, with his palm, then covers the earth again with a smooth coat of dry leaves. And then he speaks. Now it is yours to remember. You understand. Navigation was never about memorizing. It was about becoming. That evening, the group gathers again, but the fire is not lit. You sit in darkness, in a circle, eyes open to the stars. One by one, each person is asked to recount something they've seen not just in the last day, but in their time on the island. A leaf falling, a pattern in the sand, the direction birds flew when clouds gathered. Each memory becomes a thread, and together, they weave a net not to capture, but to connect. When it is your turn, you speak of the soil beneath the tree, of drawing without instruction, of being trusted. You speak of the sound the earth made when your hand touched the spiral. You speak of a silence so complete, it became its own kind of guidance. There is no applause, no nods, just stillness. That kind of listening that only happens when everyone present knows the story isn't over. Later that night, lying beneath the open sky, you hear it again. Not thunder, not wind, a hum, faint, rhythmic, beneath the earth. As if the island is dreaming again, and this time, you are part of the dream. You fall asleep with your palm pressed to the soil, and in your sleep, you feel it, the pulse of something ancient and enormous, not demanding, not instructing, simply being. You've stopped asking what the island wants from you. You've begun asking what it wants with you. You no longer walk through the forest as a visitor. Your footsteps have changed. They press lightly now, not from caution, but from familiarity. You know where the ferns tend to lean after rain, which vines hold tension, and which ones yield. Even the birds have stopped flying off when you appear. They watch you instead, tilting their heads slightly, as if wondering what kind of creature learns this slowly and still dares to keep trying. The navigator gives you more space now. He does not guide your mornings or ask what you've seen. He simply observes from a distance, the way one watches a sapling grow not out of impatience, but with quiet faith. He speaks less each day, but when he does, his words are pointed, almost sparse. One day, he says only this: you know the path. When you stop seeking it, you nod, though the meaning only lands hours later, while you're tracing a freshwater crab through a creek bed with your fingertips. A small ceremony takes place at dusk. Not one for celebration, but for transition. There is no feast, no song. Just a fire built without speaking, and small bundles passed into each voyager's hands: cordage, dried root, carved shells, charcoal. Tools for remembering, not tools for survival. You sense the difference. The high priest speaks for the first time in many days, his voice like worn cloth, soft but strong. He reminds everyone that the journey did not end with landfall. That arrival is never the end, only the beginning of another kind of voyage. He blesses the ground beneath your feet, not as property, but as temporary partnership. He says the words slowly, knowing you all understand them now in a way you couldn't before. The next morning, the navigator comes to you early. He says nothing, only hands you a small woven pouch and begins to walk. You follow, the others still sleeping behind you. The two of you pass through familiar glades, over damp ridges, and across a narrow bridge of stones over the stream. Then, suddenly, you are in a part of the island you've never seen before. The trees grow in spirals here, not in illusion, but in form. Their trunks twist upward, not as vines, but as entire bodies spinning slow like breath held for centuries. The ground is littered with dark petals. The air smells different, thicker, almost like salt, though no ocean lies in sight. The navigator walks to a fallen trunk and sits, motioning for you to do the same. When you sit, he reaches into his own pouch and draws out a small carved disc, no larger than your palm. Its surface is marked with grooves, radiating lines, intersecting arcs, tiny notches that at first seem random. But you recognize the pattern. It mimics the star paths you memorized during your apprenticeship, but compressed, altered, layered. He places the disc in your hands and closes your fingers around it. This is not a map, he says quietly. It is a conversation between sky and sea, between body and bone. You carry it not to follow, but to remember how to feel your way forward. You sit with that. You let the silence stretch, and in that quiet, you feel it. The knowledge that the disc holds no secrets, but it echoes the secrets you've already met. He tells you one final lesson, not a chant, not a riddle, just a question. What do you do when the stars disappear? You do not answer, not because you don't know, but because you do. Later that day, the sky darkens unexpectedly, not with storm, but with eclipse. The sun dims, the shadows vanish, and the birds cry out in sharp, overlapping bursts. The others gather quickly, some nervous, some awed. You do not speak, you do not look up. Instead, you close your eyes. You listen, you feel, you remember. When the stars disappear, you do not panic, you do not stop. You trust the rhythm you've carried in your chest since the beginning. You let your skin read the wind. You let your breath measure the tide. You let the land speak, not in symbols, but in pulses. You open your eyes. And the path is still there. It always was. The eclipse passes. The light returns in a soft wave, not sudden, not dramatic. Just a slow reappearance, as if the island were exhaling after holding its breath for too long. Shadows stretch back into place. The wind resumes its lazy movement through the trees. A bird calls, a low, wavering note. Then another, then more. The forest, it seems, has decided you've passed some kind of test. Or maybe it has simply decided you've stayed long enough to witness it all. The others disperse from the clearing without being told. No one speaks of the eclipse. No one claps or gasps or writes it down. They carry it now, like you carry the spiral stone's memory, or the humming soil. These are not events to be catalogued. They are transformations, quiet, internal, cumulative. Like the way a river changes a stone, not with force, but with time. The navigator doesn't appear again for 2 days. You spend the time walking further than usual, tracing streams, tracking bird migrations, feeling your way through sections of the island that no longer feel foreign, but not quite familiar either. You find a beach on the far side where the sand is black and heavy, almost metallic. You kneel there for a long while, watching the tide pull at the shore like fingers massaging muscle. It's not dramatic, just persistent. You wonder how many years it would take for the beach to disappear completely. When the navigator returns, he seems older. Not tired, simply weathered. Like a rope left in the sun too long, he tells you it's almost time. He does not specify what for. You do not ask. The question, you realize, isn't important anymore. Instead, he hands you a bundler, tightly packed roll of fibers, leaves, and something wrapped in tapa cloth. Inside, you find a small piece of coral, a dried sea slug, and a feather. Not rare things, but together, they hum, not audibly. They hum the way memory does, low, steady, unmistakable. You recognize them not by their names, but by what they remind you of. Coral, the reef you crossed to reach this place, slicing the canoe as it creaked and protested. Sea slug, the strange, sour meal from your fourth night, barely edible, but deeply satisfying. Feather, the first day you noticed a bird watching you without fear. The navigator says, these are your anchors. Not weights, markers. You understand, the island has begun to let you go. That evening, you sit near the fire with the rest of the voyaging group. But this time, something is different. The fire is not in the center. It is to the side. The circle is incomplete. The formation is not accidental. You realize that the space left empty is intentional, an invitation. A signal. The journey is about to shift again. One of the elders speaks, a woman who rarely addresses the group. Her voice is like crushed shells, dry but textured. She tells the story of another voyage, one that ended in silence. Not because of failure, but because the voyagers forgot how to remember. They arrived, but they didn't listen. They built shelters, but ignored the stones. They survived, but they did not belong. You feel the lesson press into you like a fingerprint. After she finishes, the navigator places a bowl in the center of the incomplete circle. Inside is water, nothing else. He invites each voyager to approach and touch the surface with a single finger. When your turn comes, the water is warm not from the fire, but from the accumulated heat of so many fingertips. You press your finger to it, and it trembles. Not violently, gently, like it knows who you are. The ceremony ends without fanfare. No final chant, no closing words. Just the slow dispersal of people who know they are nearing the edge of something they don't quite want to leave. That night, you sleep facing the stars again. But instead of searching for paths, you begin marking farewells. That star was your guide during the third week. That one blinked during the storm. That cluster first appeared the night you heard the drumbeat in the soil. You no longer name them. You greet them, and quietly, you begin to thank them. Your dreams take on a different tone, no longer journeying outward, but inward. You walk through forests that resemble the one you've known, but the trees whisper in your own voice. The sky does not change color, it pulses, breathes. You wake not with urgency, but with clarity. It is almost time. You begin the day with quiet rituals, not ones taught by any elder or chanted around a fire, but ones you've built for yourself. Slow stretches of the limbs, hands pressed to bark, breath counted with the rise of the wind. The navigator watches you from a distance, nodding only once, as if to confirm that you've crossed some invisible threshold. Not of skill, not even of readiness, but of belonging. You spend the morning alone, not by order, but by choice. There's a kind of gravity pulling inward now, like the tide turning beneath your skin. You walk to the high ridge overlooking the southern edge of the island, where the trees open slightly and the view is stitched with blue horizon. The sea's out there vast, calm, and blinking, and you realize that it no longer frightens you. It no longer even calls you. It simply waits. The thought isn't comforting, nor is it ominous. It's just true. The ocean is not a place of danger or mystery anymore. It is a continuation, a canvas of memory. What waits across it is not conquest, but communion. You crouch at the edge of the ridge and close your eyes. Beneath you, the land murmurs not in words, but in warmth, in tension, in scent. You can feel the undergrowth growing. You can feel the insects shifting their patterns. You can feel the water threading through the earth below your feet like veins through flesh. The island is not dead matter. It's alive. It has been listening to you, watching you, teaching you. And now, it's preparing to release you. Back in the clearing, the others are already assembling the vaca. It has been disassembled, stored, its parts oiled and protected. Now it is being reborn. You join them not because you are told, but because your body moves as if it has always known this rhythm. You lift whole pieces without needing instruction. You lash lines without checking twice. You run your fingers along wood that no longer feels like an object, but like a partner. The navigator calls for silence once the frame is rebuilt. The vaca sits like a sleeping animal, sleek, steady, slightly impatient. He circles it once, murmuring something you can't hear. And then he turns to the group. "This canoe will not take you home," he says, his voice almost lost in the wind. "Because home is not where you began. It's where you carry what you've become." No one speaks. The launch will be at dawn. The tide must be right. The stars must be in the right order. But tonight, there is one final rite. Each voyager must walk alone to a place on the island that changed them. Not to say goodbye, but to acknowledge the gift. The land does not demand thanks. It asks only for recognition. You choose the stone, of course the spiral half buried in moss. The place where the silence was thick enough to hear through. You walk there without light, feet memorizing the path. When you arrive, you kneel without thinking. The moss is damp. The stone is warm, somehow, even in the darkness. You place your hand on it, as you did weeks ago, and this time, it speaks not with sound, not with language, but with memory. You remember the sea. You remember the way the paddle rubbed blisters into your palms. You remember the chant of the high priest and the way he steadied your breath. You remember the first fish caught, the first night slept in rain, the first time you stopped wishing to be somewhere else. You remember becoming someone new. And then you rise. In the dark, you return to the clearing, and you sleep. At first light, the vaca is lifted. Not onto the sea, not yet. First, onto shoulders. Each voyager takes a caller, a beam, a rope. The canoe is carried through the trees like something sacred, not heavy, but deliberate. The forest watches. The birds stay silent. The path is soft. When you reach the shore, the wind shifts, just slightly. The smell of salt, of distance, of open possibility. The ocean doesn't roar. It inhales. The tide creeps in like it's reaching for you. You set the vaca down. You anchor it with care. You prepare the sails. You do all the things your body remembers. But you do not launch yet. You wait for the stars. Tonight, you will begin again. But you will not be who you were. The final night is thick with anticipation, not the restless kind, but the quiet weight of ceremony, drawing its final breath. You lie in the sand beside the vaca, its polished sides gleaming faintly under the moonlight. Around you, the others rest, some murmuring low chants, some asleep, some sitting upright with their eyes fixed on the stars as they rise one by one. No one laughs. No one rushes. Time is slowed, stretched, melted into something wide and forgiving. There is no countdown, only readiness. The navigator sits apart, near the edge of the tide, his legs folded, his face lifted toward the sky. You watch him for a long time, tracing the silhouette of his shoulders against the dark sea. He does not speak, But you know what he's waiting for, the moments when the stars arrange themselves into the old path, the sequence passed down through generations, the celestial signal that says, go, and it comes slowly. First, the rising of Hikinalia, low on the eastern horizon. Then, the unfurling of Teika o Te Rangi. Then the northwestern pull of Maniakalani, steady and low. The arc forms like breath-forming fogging cool air, gradual, familiar, sacred. The navigator rises, says nothing, just nods once. The journey begins. You do not speak either. You move to your place on the vaka and begin checking the lashing, testing the cords, aligning the bundles. Everyone else moves in rhythm with you, as if guided by one unseen hand. It is not militaristic, nor rehearsed. It is remembered, deeply, bodily, beyond thought. The final push comes just before dawn. The sky is beginning to pale. The stars are still out, but retreating slowly, like elders yielding space to younger voices. You press your shoulder to the hull and push. The vaka glides. The water welcomes you back like a friend who never needed an apology. It lifts the canoe with surprising gentleness, the swell taking hold as if the vessel had never left. You settle into your place, paddle in hand, gaze forward. The navigator kneels near the prow, eyes scanning the horizon, face calm. No maps, no compass, only the sky, only memory, only presence. Hours pass, though you do not measure them. The sun rises, burning through a thin veil of cloud. The waves steady. The wind picks up, curling through the sail with a low hum. You feel your muscles settle into old habits. You do not need to think anymore. The canoe knows where to go. You only need to listen. A seabird appears near midday, long wings, bright eye. It circles the vaka once, then glides toward the northwest. You mark its direction. The navigator sees it too, nods slightly, but says nothing. The silence between you all is not emptiness, it is music. The wind in the rigging, the slap of wave against hull, the low creak of the mast, the occasional cough or murmur. These are the instruments now. This is the chant. By evening, you were far from the island. You look back once. It's barely visible, a dark thread on the edge of memory, but you are not sad. You feel, instead, what can only be described as expansion. You are not leaving something behind, you are carrying it forward. As the sun sets and the sky darkens, the stars return. And this time, you see them differently, not as points, not as navigation, but as a language you now speak. They are not signs, they are sentences, they are songs, they are you. You lean back slightly, letting the salt wind kiss your skin, and for the first time, you smile, not because anything was conquered, not because you finished something, but because you remember who you were before you ever stepped into the canoe, and because now, you are someone else, someone shaped by salt, by silence, by spiral stone and feather and flame, someone who can read the ocean, someone who belongs not to the land or sea but to the rhythm that connects them. You let your eyes close, and you let the vaka carry you forward. Now, take a slow breath, and let it fall out like a tide returning to shore. Let your muscles soften, just a little, let your jaw unclench. Let your toes stretch against the bed, like roots into soft earth. You've traveled far tonight, not just across the sea, but through layers of memory, through forests that whispered, and stars that remembered your name. You've been hungry, and cold, and brave, and quiet. You've knelt before a stone. You've read the wind. You've been carried by silence. The island may be behind you now, but its rhythm is still here, tucked into the corners of your body, humming in the space behind your eyes. Let it stay there. Let it hold you. There's no need to search anymore. The sky is above you, steady and slow. The sea is beneath you, patient and kind. The canoe is beneath your back now, gentle as a cradle. Sleep is not something you must find tonight. It is something already waiting, already drifting toward you. On a current, on a chant, on a breeze. You are not lost. You are not alone. You are exactly where you need to be. Let the stars fade. Let your breath slow. And let the ocean carry you just a little farther. Good night.